Welcome to Politics Nation. I'm Al Sharpton. Tonight's lead, Romney, the job destroyer. A new report on Romney's past as CEO of Bain Capital reveals explosive details on his career shipping American jobs overseas. It leaves no doubt that Romney's fortune was built in part at the expense of American workers. Quote, during the nearly 15 years that Romney was actively involved in running Bain Capital, it owned companies that were pioneers in the practice of shipping work from the United States to overseas call centers and factories making computer components. The jobs went from the U.S. to all over the world. Jobs shipped to China, to India, to Taiwan, Japan, Singapore, Malaysia, South Korea, Ireland, and France. Make no mistake, this report could be a game changer because Romney is running on his business record. He claims experience in the private sector qualifies him for the White House. And he's had the audacity to hit President Obama for letting American jobs get outsourced.
How is it China's been so successful in taking away our jobs? This president has just sat idly by and watched that happen. Oh, he complains. He says he would take them to the mat. But they've walked all over him. If I'm president of the United States, that's going to end.
We will not let China continue to steal jobs from the United States of America.
Chinese are smiling all the way to the bank, taking our currency and taking our jobs and taking a lot of our future. And I'm not willing to let that happen.
Not willing to let that happen? But the fact is, he did. And on the same day of this new report coming out, Romney's campaign comes out with a brand new ad in swing states like Ohio. Once again, making the claim that he'll bring back jobs from overseas.
President Romney's first 100 days. What will they mean for Ohio? Day one, President Romney stands up to China, demands a level playing field for our businesses and workers.
It doesn't get more blatant than this. Romney says he cares about American jobs. It's his priority for him. But he spent years making his fortune destroying American jobs. President Obama is going on the offense in a big way. Here was his response at a campaign event in Florida earlier today.
You know, today it was reported in the Washington Post that the companies his firm owned were pioneers in the outsourcing of American jobs to places like China and India. Pioneers. Let me tell you, Tampa, we do not need an outsourcing pioneer in the Oval Office. We need a president who will fight for American jobs and fight for American manufacturing. That's what my plan will do. That's why I'm running for a second term as President of the United States.
Joining me now is Jared Bernstein, MSNBC contributor and the former chief economist for Vice President Joe Biden, and E.J. Dionne, Washington Post columnist and author. His new book is Our Divided Political Heart. Thanks to both of you for joining me.
Good to be here.
Thank you. E.J., let me start with you. How important is this new report to the Romney campaign? Is this as game-changing as I'm suspecting?
I'm always reluctant to declare anything game-changing because something comes along tomorrow and changes the game again. But I think this is a big deal. It's a big deal for the reason you said, which is if you're going to make your business experience a centerpiece of your campaign, then what you did with that business is important. And the fact that he is running those ads on the one hand, but then presided over a lot of outsourcing on the other, really raises real issues. Second, a lot of the votes in play in this election in places like Ohio are blue-collar votes from people who are very concerned about outsourcing. Romney's rhetoric about the Chinese currency problem is aimed directly at those people. I think a lot of those voters are going to look at this and not know what to make of it except to say maybe he isn't on our side. And I think you heard today a term coined by President Obama off that Washington Post story, outsourcing pioneer, that we're going to be hearing between now and Election Day.
And for the president himself to use it, you can bet his re-election campaign is going to use it. And this story is definitely not going to go away if the Obama campaign has anything to do with it from the looks of the president addressing it today.
And I think the interesting question, you use the term game change, is it's been not the greatest couple of weeks for the president, especially with the recent jobs report. And it'll be interesting if this gives a kind of opportunity for Obama to go on the defensive and whether it'll throw Mitt Romney on defense. I think the way, and it's also going into a weekend.
Yeah.
And the president, when he said the comment about the private sector doing fine, of course, he was talking about it relative to the government sector. That played all weekend. I think this is one of those stories that's also going to play in the course of the weekend.
Well, Jared, let me say this. The Romney campaign responded. Let me give you their quote. They're saying, quote, "This is a fundamentally flawed story that does not differentiate between domestic outsourcing versus offshoring, nor versus work done overseas to support U.S. exports." In English, could you tell me, does that mean they were outsourcing or not?
Let me come over there and try to untangle that sentence from around your throat there. Look, you hear Mitt Romney on the television saying China's been taking our jobs. Turns out he's been giving to them. And so I agree that this is tough for him. Now, here's the thing, and you kind of referenced this in your introduction. This is the way private equity works. We should all understand this. Their bottom line is profitability. And if it's profitable to outsource and offshore jobs, and that distinction you just made was pretty nonsensical, or that the campaign made, if it's profitable to outsource jobs, outsource factories, to build it in China instead of here, believe me, that's what they're going to do. That's private equity. And you know what? That's a legitimate business model. We might not like it, but it's a legitimate business model. It is not a legitimate political model for a president, especially a president in a moment where we've actually added about 500,000 manufacturing jobs since employment started growing in the spring of 2010. There's a bit of a positive trend there. It's a very important one. So what you really want to hear is not, I was in the private sector, I did private equity, I outsourced a bunch of jobs. You want to hear, what's your plan for manufacturing? The president has one. Governor Romney explicitly does not.
But isn't that really the point, EJ? The point is that Governor Romney himself raised his tenure at Bain and said it will establish me as a job creator. I think the American public is mature enough that they really only expect of you what you tell them to expect of you. Well, he brought it up. So I think the reason I think it becomes so effective is because this is where you brought us. You talked about jobs going to China and going overseas, and now we find out you engaged in that. And I think that is why, if it had not been something he brought up, it may not have the same impact.
No, I think that's totally right. I mean, at the beginning of the campaign especially, he was bragging about his time at Bain, and he said he had produced a certain number of American jobs while he was at Bain, and then that number changed a little bit, and then he tended to back off any hard number altogether. So that if you're going to look at the plus side of his ledger, and he did create some jobs in some companies, then you're going to look at the minus side of the ledger. And so you can't sort of ask the American voter, just look over here, don't look at what's behind the curtain. But I think the other thing is you can tell this is problematic because you had to turn to Jared to translate that press release. And if there is an easy answer to say this is all wrong, you don't have to sort of make these strange distinctions between outsourcing and offshoring.
You would give an easy answer if there was one. But Jared, the other reason that I think this is going to be a problem for them is the president himself went right at it. The president himself, by name, quoting the newspaper in the article, went at it. And I think you're right. There's nothing wrong with dealing with those that are in the equity business. There's nothing wrong with big business. But the question is, what do you bring out of that to the political? Let me show you what the president said that I think was a very, very critical point. And this is where the president said that, yes, he did good, but did he bring the right lessons out of there into being president? Watch this.
Now, my opponent in this election, Governor Romney, is a patriotic American. He should be proud of the personal success he achieved as the head of a large financial firm. But I think he's drawn the wrong lessons from these experiences.
Drawing the wrong lessons from these experiences, Jared. I think that is something that might resonate, particularly now with this information going public.
Well, I think that's right. You know, one of the jobs of people like me is to try to get a little bit into the weeds and look at the actual policies that these guys are proposing underneath the level of campaign rhetoric. And here, as I mentioned earlier, the president really does have a manufacturing agenda. It's a clean energy agenda. It's an agenda to disincentivize factories from going abroad. He has some tax changes he'd like to do to make it to take back some of these actual tax benefits for factories to go abroad and to make it more profitable for them to be set up here. And then when you look at Mitt Romney, his plan, I've read the 59 points. I mean, not only is there no plan for manufacturing, but they really quite explicitly say, no, that's a free market thing. We're not going to do anything there. The only thing they do say, and I want to give them credit for that, is they're going to go after China currency, something the White House very much agrees with them on. So I think you have to really look at what's behind the rhetoric, and there you see very much a laissez-faire, trickle-down supply side. Let's kind of let it break. That's the lessons that the president is talking about that Governor Romney has learned from his business experience.
EJ, let me close with you. Not long ago, Romney was attacking the president, saying that he's attacking capitalism. Take a listen.
There's no question but that he's attacking capitalism, in part, I think, because he doesn't understand how the free economy works. If all the president wants to do is talk about the failures, why, he's misrepresenting the nature of free enterprise.
Misrepresenting the nature of free enterprise. Well, we've got you now investing in companies that outsource jobs. Are we misrepresenting that?
Well, first of all, if President Obama hates capitalism, how do you explain the fact that he's presided over roughly a doubling of the Dow Jones average since the trough back in 2009? Secondly, I always like to joke, I actually know some socialists, and they're insulted when Barack Obama is called a socialist because he's obviously committed to capitalism. What we're talking about is what kind of capitalism do we want in America? Do we want the kind that saddles companies with big debts and then pushes them out of business? Do we want the incentives in the tax code, as Jared mentioned, to encourage job creation here or to encourage job creation overseas? They're both capitalists, but there are different kinds of capitalism, and that's what we're arguing about in the election.
Well, I have a diverse duo I started with tonight. You know, socialist, and Jared read all 59 points of Mitt Romney. Quite the end of the week. Jared Bernstein and EJ Dion, thanks for your time tonight. Both of you have a great weekend, and good luck on the book, EJ.
Thank you so much.